Hey, we're back for episode 2.
I want to thank the over 5,000 listeners from 78 countries that downloaded episode 1.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know what? We're really thankful and truly honored that not only the folks that know us that took the time to support us and downloaded and left a great review, we really appreciate that. But thanks to all the folks that are just interested in this type of material that just gave us a chance, and we shot up the charts a little bit.
Yeah, we got enough traffic that Apple saw fit to move us into the new and noteworthy category in podcasts, and I think that's what really set it to skyrocketing.
No, that's very cool, and you know, who knows how long that'll stay up there, but it really gives us motivation to keep going and provide some really cool stories for you.
So that said, with all the traffic we're getting to the website and everything, I decided that it was probably time to go ahead and set up some points of contact for us, because we didn't have we had an email address, which everyone should know, astonishinglegends@gmail.com. But we needed to set up a phone, and we needed to get sort of a P.O. box and that sort of thing. So I took it upon myself today to start going down that road, and I went and made a Google Voice account for us so we would have a phone number.
It was a good way to leave us a story idea or something kind of cool.
Right.
But what happened? You tried to tell me about it.
By the way, we haven't set up the voicemail box yet, but one of the first things I noticed about Google Voice is that I could text people right from the browser there. So the very first thing I did was I texted Forrest and I said, hey, look, this is our new Google Voice number.
Yeah, except I didn't get that text.
Yeah.
Someone else got it.
Yeah, I guess I had transposed the area code or something, and my message went to somebody in Virginia. Although I was not aware of that, who promptly wrote back, who is this? Which is actually a pretty standard reply for Forrest.
I don't do it every time, but, every once in a while, just to kind of rile him a little bit, I might say something back that's cryptic, just to keep him guessing.
So I waited a little bit, and I wrote back, and I said, it's Indrid Cold. And now, people who have found this show because you were looking for us, you might know who Indrid Cold was. A lot of you probably don't. I'm a huge fan of the Mothman, the story of the Mothman, specifically as it relates to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, although he's been seen all over the world.
Yeah, and there's a great book by John
Keel.
John Keel, that's right.
Yes, it's a very good book.
So it's lore that's been around for quite a long time, but this character Indrid Cold is a key figure that's also in the movie, and it's a very good creepy scene.
Yeah,
where he gets a phone call. Richard Gere gets a phone call from this person who
in the Mothman prophecies.
Yeah, who seems to be omniscient, which kind of freaks Richard out.
And he's a great scary voice and all that stuff, and based on a real life encounter from one of the original witnesses in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, who said that he ran into this guy who called himself Indrid Cold.
My name is Indrid Cold.
Right. And with the very low, like he's got a bad connection. He's like, just like the kind of voice you don't want to hear in the middle of the night. But no, I think they just thought, I don't know who that is.
No, well, when I texted this stranger who I thought was Forrest, if they bothered to Google Indrid Cold, they probably would have been a little bit freaked out.
Well, I can only hope that they do, because you know what, I should have just kept the conversation up, because how often do you get to talk to an interdimensional being?
Yeah, well,
supposedly.
So the next text from them they didn't want to talk to an interdimensional.
There was a lot of question marks and a lot of exclamation points.
And the gist of the message was, leave me the F alone.
Yeah. But which the prankster part of me now wants to periodically send little messages.
Yeah.
But no, we won't.
So anyway, I have to apologize to that poor person in Virginia for impersonating an interdimensional being.
It's very unlikely that we'll keep this up. Yeah, so we'll keep bothering you.
Let's go to the show. Welcome back to Astonishing Legends. I'm Scott Philbrook, and this is Forrest Burgess.
If you knew that your life was merely a phase or short segment of your entire existence, how would you live? Knowing nothing real was at risk, what would you do? You'd live a gigantic, bold, fun, dazzling life. You know you would. That's what the ghosts want us to do. All the exciting things they no longer can. Chuck Palahniuk.
In tonight's show, we're going to hear a story about a romantic getaway that went wrong on one of the most haunted ships in the world that's now a hotel.
I was just so frozen with fear, I had to look away.
So, we're off to the Queen Mary.
Yeah, a ship with a lot of history.
Right, but also, for local folks in the Southern California area, a really cool, quick getaway that's got everything there, right?
Yeah, it's perfect. You want to take a trip, but maybe you don't have time to go way far out of town. You just want something nice, and you know what? It's Valentine's Day. You need it to be a home run.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like going to an 80-year-old cruise ship that was, at the time, the height of luxury.
Yeah, it's not only got the history, but everything's on board. You got a couple of great restaurants, and you're not a typical hotel because you have to make this evening right. You've got a limited amount of time, right?
Yeah, that's right. Valentine's Day is all about keeping the romance alive. Everybody's working, especially in the United States. Working all the time, not taking breaks, not taking vacations. You really got to make these little things count.
And at the end of the evening, what are you looking for, Scott?
Oh, you're just looking for a nice, comfortable, clean room.
Which the Queen Mary has, but with another problem.
You know you're in trouble when Time Magazine calls it one of the top 10 most haunted places in the world.
Unless you're like us, and you might be looking for that kind of thing, but probably your significant other isn't.
No, not in this case.
Well, let's go to the interview.
So we're going to talk to a couple of our friends, Marty and Alice here, who have some stories to tell us. You guys have been married
Married.
for how long now?
15 years.
15 years.
All right, and-
known each other for 20.
No.
5,
Yes.
at least.
Careful.
Yes, we've known each other for 25.
Okay, so that's part of the reason we wanted to interview you together, because you have a very entertaining dynamic. I would
A
say.
history.
Yeah.
A dynamic.
So
a dynamic history in that.
You want to talk about the Queen Mary first?
All right. I don't remember exactly what year it was. I
I
know
don't
it was for Valentine's Day.
Right. I think it was, we were married at the time, right?
Yeah, we were living in
So it was
Venice.
probably 1997.
So I was sick that year, my yearly flu, cold deal. And I was probably...
You were on antibiotics.
On antibiotics, fever, flu, the whole
But you were,
deal.
by the time we went,
Right,
you
but
were at the tail end of
I was
taking
at the
your
tail end of
antibiotics.
it, but I like to tell it by setting that up, that I was sick prior to this trip. And I did have a big fever, and then I took antibiotics and went through that whole deal. But I wasn't quite done with the antibiotics, finished this medication as directed, and I did. And Alice had surprised me with a trip to the Queen Mary for Valentine's Day.
Let me just say, I had seen some show and they stayed overnight there and the rooms looked so cool. So I thought, let's go.
And it is a boat that it used to be a cruise ship.
Well, it was a ship that went over, it was a transatlantic.
I knew about it. I mean, I've talked to people about it. I know that there is some history with it. And
Well, it's a notoriously haunted place,
Right.
which we didn't really take into consideration.
No, we didn't. And that, it didn't really, make me want to not go or go any more
It's
or
a
less.
beautiful ship.
Yeah, I just don't like doing things in general, so I didn't want to go just for sake of not going. I felt bad that Alice had made these plans, and, I wanted to follow through with it. So we went, and it's about 45, we were living in Venice at the time, it's about a 45-minute drive. And we get there.
We go to check in.
We go to check in, and we get our key, we go to our room, and we walk all the way to the...
One end.
One end of the boat. I believe it was to the back of the boat. And we go into the room, and being with my wife as long as I have, I know the procedure with when we go anywhere, which is never to unpack the bags until she has pretty much given the blessing that the room is okay and there's no,
Well, we just
bed
have to say
shortage
that
of pillows
there was a
an ample
queen-size
closet.
bed. There was a queen-size bed
but
in the room, and there was pretty much no room around the bed to walk. So it was very small.
The room was ridiculously small. It was so small,
and
that,
you are claustrophobic, so
that
you didn't
it only
like it.
had each room. I thought would have a porthole window. This room literally had half a window. It was literally
It was super
in
small.
half, and the bed was too big for the room. So, without even missing a beat, Alice goes up to the front desk and proceeds to
I basically said that room is
make a
ridiculously
complaint.
small. Can you
and
please move our room?
They give us a different room, and we march to the other end
Wasn't
of the boat.
it in the middle?
No, it was
on
now
the other
going
end.
to the front of the bout.
Okay, just for some people, I want to say the back of the boat is sometimes referred to as the stern.
The stern, yes. My father would be very disappointed.
and actually, I'm just picking on you.
No, that is true. So we went, yes.
So anyway, we get to this room.
We get to this room.
We open the door.
Open the door. And let me just say, there were 3 porthole windows in there. The room
It had
was
a king-size
gigantic.
bed,
It was huge.
a table and chairs set up for 6. It was ridiculously
huge.
tremendous.
It was just a giant room.
And at that point, we should have known.
Yeah,
that
so it
there's
was just
something
like,
wrong with that room.
so right away, I'm like, this is great. Look at this. Wow, good job, honey. That's fantastic. So because we didn't book it, I guess, earlier enough, for whatever reason, we couldn't get dinner on the boat, so we found a restaurant in town, and I remember
we were getting
being
ready.
a little bummed out about that.
Yeah.
That we weren't going to be eating on the boat, but nonetheless, it was whatever. So here we go. We're getting to the heart of it. Alice goes into the bathroom to get ready for going out to dinner. And I'm in the bedroom watching TV and looking out the portholes and checking things out. And the door to the bathroom has a full-length mirror on it. And the door was open probably about halfway. And Alice is getting ready. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I should probably get ready now. And I go get into my luggage, and I go to get my shirt or whatever, and I take it off. And I remember going up to the mirror and putting on the shirt, and I look up in the mirror, and at this point, there is somebody in the mirror, like doing what I'm doing, like basically getting ready. There was someone not like in front of me, but like behind me, not like mimicking me or anything, but just like he was getting ready too.
Just
and
doing
the
his
only
own
way I
thing.
could describe him is as the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I believe his name is John.
That's the actor John Neville.
John Neville.
I'm Baron Munchausen. That sounds nasty. Is it contagious?
He was in a tuxedo, like in tails, like getting ready to go out, and like I just froze. Like and then it was one of those things where I didn't want to move because of all the cliches and everything you ever see. Whenever you look away and you go back, it's going to be gone. So I didn't want to unlock my eyes from what I was seeing, and I knew it was wrong, but I was seeing it, and it was there, and it was for probably, I'd say, like a couple of seconds.
Well, and the other thing is that up until this point was pretty much a non-believer. So it was probably...
Of any, you'd never seen an apparition.
I had never seen anything, and a big poo-pooer, and I don't believe anything. I've tried and countless games of the Ouija board. Just you're moving that. I know you're moving that.
All right, can I ask you a few questions just
Yes.
before we move ahead?
Yes.
First of all, what was Alice doing at this point?
Alice was in the bathroom getting ready. She was taking a shower, getting ready to go out.
It was at the sink.
She was like, no, you were in the shower.
I was?
And I just, because
Okay.
I remember the shower water going, and then I remember the door being open like halfway. It was at like a 45-degree angle where like it was open to the bathroom, but I was out in the room part, and I could see myself in that mirror. And the room was just empty behind me. The TV was not behind me. I've gone through this a million times.
Okay. So let me moving on.
Yes.
Did you see him appear or disappear?
I saw him just there. It was like a hard cut in. Like just boom, he's there.
But it was like when you looked in the mirror, he was behind you. But it wasn't as if you saw him like poof show up. It's like when you looked up, he was just there.
He was just there.
Okay. And did you see him disappear?
No. I just looked, and as long as I was looking into the mirror, he was there. And this is where I became like frozen with fear, like where the back of my neck, I got an instant headache, and like it was just like almost a brain freeze, like a locking up kind of a thing. And I knew if I looked away, it was going to disappear. And when I did look away, it would disappear. So I was trying to hold on to it as long as I could.
What made you then look away? I mean, if you knew that you were trying to hold this gaze and that, yeah.
I was too afraid.
But so then...
I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, it was almost like a staring contest. It was like, how long can I look at this? And with her in the bathroom and getting ready. And I was like, how long can I hold on to it? And I was looking at it. And then I was like, finally... I was just so frozen with fear, I had to look away. Like, I just didn't, I was done at that point. I had seen it, and I was like, okay, duly noted.
You threw in the towel. Okay,
Yeah. Well, I was like not up to questioning and going into a whole, exploratory thing of what was going on at that moment because I was scared and freaked out and didn't understand what was going on. And more importantly, I didn't want to freak out my wife who had planned this vacation. I didn't want to give her that because I know how sensitive she is to these kinds of things. And if I said anything, it would...
I would have said, let's go. We're leaving.
It would have upset her. And
We're going.
We hadn't even gone to dinner yet. I mean, we barely unpacked.
Okay, so my next question for you is, did you have any interaction or he was oblivious to you?
I think he was oblivious to me. It was more of a, we're doing the same thing at the same time in this mirror. Something happened. Like, it was almost like a leftover memory or just some sort of, time some kind of...
Maybe like an echo.
A synchronicity of some kind. Like, it was just one of those things, like where he was getting ready, but at a different time almost. That's really all I could take away from it. Like, was that, this was a ghost and that he was doing something in the same spot, similar to what I'm doing, and I just somehow crossed paths with it.
And it was solid.
It was, it wasn't the ghost that's projected on you at the end of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. It wasn't holographic. It was more solid than that, but yet it was not physical. Like, it wasn't, it was more of an image than a...
Would you say like maybe 2D as opposed to seeing something 3D, like, your vision, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, it was like a picture. Yeah, it was a picture.
Maybe a little flat.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you think, I'm going to turn around and look and see if he's really there?
And I'm going to do the look back, and then it's not going to be there. And, of course, it wasn't. And then I was, like, trying to, stretch my neck out. Because, I mean, it's that same thing like when a dog or a wild animal, you get in that fear mode, that instinctive thing. That's what I'm talking about. That numbing, that's the sensation that freaked me out, was that it was almost like this instinctive, like, it was just weird. And I look back, nothing there. And then it was, okay, how can you just pretend this didn't happen? Like, all those things are going through my head. Like, this will probably never happen again because you're probably never going to come back here again.
All right, so and you didn't hear any sounds associated with it.
No sounds. So the rest of the trip, the rest of it goes like this. We go out to dinner. I'm now plagued with this just horrible vision, and I've got a bad vibe. I'm not, and I was, by the way, on antibiotics still, so I was not drinking, and I wasn't smoking, nothing. I was sober when this whole thing happened, through this whole weekend, still finishing out the antibiotics, and we go out to dinner, and I remember it was horrible. It was a Spanish restaurant. We had the speaker. We got seated outside. There were no heaters by us. It was February, and it was the Valentine's thing. It was the typical Valentine's thing where there's just tables of two everywhere. We got situated under this, I remember, Bose outdoor, sorry, Bose, speaker that was like over cranked. And it was like just this bad music. The food sucked. Anyway, the dinner was horrible, and I just didn't want to go back, but we went back, and I recall there being a dance on the boat. And I think one of the reasons why our room was where it was originally was because we wound up being put in a larger room. However, we were underneath what was obviously the
dance floor,
parquet wood dance floor. And it was a big dance, like a radio event kind of sponsored thing. So there were lots of heels, lots of footsteps.
It was
that were obviously from this dance. So, not feeling so hot, we just kind of called it an early night.
We called it an early night, and we decided, let's just watch TV. So we're watching TV, and the TV was on pretty much all night, and we were kind of dozing in and out, and I'm having the most horrific nightmares of, like, air dogfights and death and, like, planes crashing into, like, literally, like, shooting each other down, and and it was just like horrible, and I kept waking up.
Yeah,
it was
just
like,
one bad infomercial
really
after
bad.
another, but there was no way I was turning the TV off.
Yeah.
Like, the TV was just going to stay on, and of course I looked back in the mirror again and went in the bathroom and looked at another mirror, and I was trying to, like, get it to happen again because it was like, all right, we're in here, let's see it happen. And I was not telling her about it because I still didn't want to give that up, and figured there would be a time where I would tell her about it, but it wasn't going to be while we were still there.
Now, Alice, do you? I know I've known you guys for quite a long time, and I know that Marty will sometimes we'll go to some place, and you'll just get a bad vibe, or
Yes.
just like you're not feeling comfortable, so you want to leave.
I have had that.
Yeah, but what I was going to ask is that did you notice anything odd with his behavior, more so than usual?
He definitely was agitated, but I just kind of went with it because I figured, he's just agitated because he gets like that. I didn't really get any kind of sense myself, but I had such bad nightmares and I had such a horrible sleep that we actually woke up at it was like 6 a.m.
The dance went on until midnight. We parked it in bed, I think, by like 10. So 2 hours of hearing that. And then
We tried to laugh it off, but-
the TV being on all night. And I would say it was probably about
It was like 6 a.m.
6 o'clock
We
in the
start
morning.
hearing.
You hear them. They weren't on the boat yet,
Like
but they were in the
weird
parking
noises. We're
lot.
like,
They were
what
in the
the
parking
hell?
lot. And so there were bagpipes, and there was a bagpipe festival that they were coming onto the boat to go be a part of.
We tried really hard to just like go with it and stay, and we're finally. It was like we need to leave.
Yeah, I
Let's
mean,
just
the
go.
bagpipes were all starting in. They started with their official song, and,
We
and
were
all
out
chimed in.
the door and checked out by 8
And I
a.m.
told her that, I thought I had fallen asleep and I had a bad dream. And then you went, that's when you just started going into all of your bad dreams that you were having. We went up to the front. I mean, we probably left stuff there. We packed within like 2 minutes.
We couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Ran to the front, checked out, and floored it out of the parking lot. I was doing like 80. I could not drive away from the Queen Mary fast enough. And
We
that's
were going
when,
over the bridge, and that's when you told me.
when we were going over the bridge, I figured, all right, we're far enough out now. I could tell her about it. And as I, of course, started telling her about it, the hair was standing up on my arms, and I'm like, I got to tell you what happened. And she was like, I'm really glad you didn't tell me that last night. So that's basically it. I mean, and that's the only thing like that I've ever seen. Have not been back to the Queen Mary since. I would go back there during the day and walk around, and I'd even go back to that room just to like go check it out and revisit it, and then it would be cool to know
if
there's something going on. And these are the questions. Did they move us to that room over there just because it was so obviously that much bigger, or were they trying to avoid putting people in that part of the boat because of whatever? I don't know.
I think
like
you nailed
I always
it when
wonder,
you said it was under the dance floor. I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's all it really.
But
was,
I don't think that there's one particular room that's more affected than another particular room there, because that whole ship is so active. Not to segue into something else, but my dad told me, and I don't know if I have this story right, but he got into an elevator there once, and there was somebody in the elevator. He walked in, turned around, faced the door, and the door's closed, and he turned around, the guy was gone.
You're listening to Astonishing Legends with Scott Philbrook and Forrest Burgess.
Hey, that was a pretty good story, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's not every day you see Baron Munchausen standing behind you.
But you know what? It's somebody we know really well, for a long time, and we know what he's like.
Yeah.
And he's not one to be goofing around with that kind of stuff.
No, he's not. He's not prone to lying. And also, by the way, if you go to our website, I had him draw a little sketch on a napkin. It's like the Stonehenge Spinal Tap thing. But he drew a sketch on a little napkin of the room, or on a Post-it or something, and sent it to me, and I've got it up on our website. And when he drew the X where he saw this thing and where he was and how close it was behind him, I got to be honest, it made my hair stand.
And this is the other question, do you believe somebody who's more prone to believe these things, or somebody who's been a skeptic all their life?
Yeah.
And he's pretty skeptical about all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, he is. Actually, I had him back in a few days ago, and I asked him directly about it.
I was a skeptic about, I mean, if somebody would have told me this story about what happened, about all the details and how I was sick beforehand, but I was completely, sober. I wasn't drunk or under any influence of anything of any kind. Yeah, I would be a skeptic, and I was a skeptic. And then there was a reason why you heard a noise happen. Old wood and beams cracking, heat, cold, whatnot. And yeah, now, of course, I have a little bit more of a sensitive spot for these sorts of things.
Okay, so to that end, that's kind of perfect because there's this last question that I have for you that's a little bit more of a complicated question. So the first thing I want to tell you is that, we're friends, and even though I've never personally seen a ghost, I believe in this case that you did. The time and circumstances were right, and if I didn't believe in stories like this, we wouldn't have the podcast. That said, when you started this story, and as you just said again there, you were coming off being sick, and you also mentioned that you were on antibiotics. Do you remember what kind of antibiotic you were on? What you were taking?
No, not exactly. It's going to be something along the lines of amoxicillin or what's commonly referred to as a Z-Pack, Zithromax.
Right.
It's going to be something of that nature because I had an infection. Whenever I get sick, I get it in my tonsils and that whole thing. And so I usually wait, but I had to take that. And I had, not at the time, but 2 weeks prior, I had a pretty intense fever and whatnot, but I was done being sick. I was pretty much finished with the regimen of
the antibiotics.
And I was extremely clear-headed because I hadn't drank or smoked.
Right.
So I was like really, really clear.
Lucid.
For me.
Right.
Very lucid.
Right. Okay.
So
well, that's good. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so Scott, next question here. Have you ever heard of antibiotics causing hallucinations?
Well, you know what? The fact is I did some research on this, and it turns out that there's a branch of antibiotics that can cause hallucinations. I think they're called, I'm probably not saying this right, but I think they're called fluoroquinolones.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I saw something.
And there's some, like ocufloxacin and some other ones.
Cipro, right?
Yes.
Oh, these are heavy-duty antibiotics when you've got anthrax.
Yeah.
Not a tonsil.
Yeah, no. Marty was pretty clear that he was not taking these. He was on like a Z-Pack or amoxicillin or something, and there is no history anywhere of those having hallucinations associated with them. I will say though, the fluoroquinolones, the floxin, ocufloxacin, Cipro, whatever, those things are some scary stuff, I got to tell you, because I read about one woman who saw giant bats flying around in her room. And another patient described people walking through walls.
Right, but even then, that's a very small percentage of people that have taken that have reported something like that happening.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and they had a whole mess of other symptoms, muscle tightness,
right.
All kinds of other issues that you don't want to say on the air.
Right. I don't think it just pops up after dinner or before dinner in this case.
Right.
With that was interesting, and then you just go on about your day.
I think we can safely rule out antibiotic-induced hallucination for Marty in this case.
Okay. We want to thank Marty and Alice for coming in. But let's talk a little bit about this fascinating ship.
Yeah, this ship has got a lot of really amazing history. She was at sea from 1936 to 67 and was Cunard's flagship from 1936 to 46. And Cunard was sort of the answer to White Star Lines, which had, the Titanic famously.
Right.
She crossed the Atlantic 1,000 times.
At least, right?
At least, yeah. And has held a speed record called the Blue Ribbon in 1936 for the fastest crossing. She lost it in 37, got it back in 38, and held it until 1952. And before jets came along, or the jet age came along, it was the best, most luxurious way that you could travel across the ocean. And the Queen Mary was so luxurious, there was one crew member for every 2 passengers. So with 1,100 crew members to 2,100 passengers on most cruise ship crossings.
Wow. And I can't find somebody at Home Depot to help me. Okay. In World War II, she was converted to a troop ship.
Yeah, her and her sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth, were perfect for moving troops over to Europe for the war. And the reason they were so good is because they were so bleeding fast, right? The Queen Mary would do 32.5 knots top speed, which made her 14 knots faster than a surfaced U-boat, 24 knots faster than a submerged U-boat, and most importantly, 7 knots faster than a torpedo.
Which is amazing. And, Hitler had offered $250,000 to any U-boat captain that could sink her.
I know. Can you imagine how much $250,000 was at that time?
It's a lot now. So back then, though.
Yeah, so during the troop movements, which I think she moved well over 100,000 troops, her and her sister ship, across the ocean, typically they would be 15,000 troops. But at one point, she broke a record that holds to this day for the most people moved on a ship. 16,082 soldiers were crammed aboard, the most ever transported on one ship.
Right, and if you should see the photos because it's amazing and it does not look comfortable.
Yeah, they ate in shifts, they slept in shifts.
They were cooking 24 hours a day.
They couldn't all be in the same place. It's like they say about Manhattan. If everyone came out of the buildings at lunchtime,
not enough street space.
Yeah, there's not enough street. But you know what? That trip was almost the greatest maritime disaster in history.
Yeah, worse than the Titanic.
Would have been 11 times more deaths, and this is what happened. The Queen Mary was on that record crossing with those 16,000 soldiers when she got broadsided by a 90-foot rogue wave.
Wow. And she tipped to 52 degrees, right?
52 degrees. Had she gone 3 more degrees to 55, she would have capsized.
Yeah.
And pretty much everybody would have died because a capsized cruise ship, that she would have gone all the way over, keel up, no one would have gotten out.
Wow.
They went, and with the crew and everything, they would have lost probably around 17,000 people. The Titanic lost 1,500.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to sneeze at. But, in one instance, though, being that crammed, definitely not enough lifeboats.
Well, and she was improperly ballasted. I mean, she wasn't dangerous, but after that happened, the captain in the winter months for the troop movements, he very politely asked the Department of Defense if they could maybe just take 10,000 people instead of 15. Right. Just in case. But there was a couple of things that were significant about that. One of them is that prior to then, there was no real confirmation that rogue waves existed.
Right.
So that was a big thing because science had sort of dismissed. Sailors had been talking about them for hundreds of years, but science was like, yeah, well, whatever. It's a story. What, a big surprise wave in the middle of nowhere? Come on.
Yeah, possibly the Flannan Island mystery.
Yeah. Which we got to do a story about that, where the lighthouse tenders all just vanished. But the rogue waves have thought to have contributed to a lot of really famous ghost ship stories, like the Mary Celeste, the Edmund Fitzgerald, or the Munich, which was a 200-foot merchant ship that made a mayday call and then disappeared with almost any trace except for a lifeboat that was found to have been wrenched off of her.
Yeah, totally swallowed by the sea.
Yeah, just gone. Yeah, right. Just gone. And the way the lifeboat had been removed indicated that she went down fast.
Yeah, and I think didn't they notice the lifeboats were tethered, anchored to the ship at a very high point.
Right.
So for a wave to come up and rip that off,
yes,
had been a massive wave.
Yeah, exactly. So in the final bonus to this event of this rogue wave, which if you can say anything's a bonus to something almost killing 17,000 people, was that self-proclaimed rotten novelist Paul Gallico wrote a book called The Poseidon Adventure.
Oh boy, one of my very seminal film for my childhood that just freaked me out. But that was the age of disaster films.
It was the Towering Inferno, The Poseidon Adventure,
Earthquake, everything was ending in a
and these movies made a lot of
ball.
money. They were very successful. And the interesting thing about The Poseidon Adventure is, even though it was made many years later, a lot of the non-capsized interior shots were actually shot in the Queen Mary.
Right.
And if you go to our website, you'll find a link to a page that talks all about how The Poseidon Adventure was made, and it's really fascinating. One of the things they indicated on that page was that when they modeled the Poseidon, they actually went to the blueprints and all the architectural drawings of the Queen Mary because they wanted to match the interior stuff they had done. And so as a result, there's a lot of actually Queen Mary accurate stuff happening in the movie The Poseidon Adventure.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember one scene in particular that sticks with me is after the ship is rolled over, there's a gentleman hanging by a cocktail table. And, of course, he loses his grip and he falls into this massive stained glass window, which is on the Queen Mary today, right?
Exactly.
Which they were inspired by, right?
Yes.
And of course, making it very dramatic.
Yes. But aside from the rogue wave incident, which there were no deaths involved with that, she did have a lot of run-ins with death, and the most famous one was probably when she hit her escort ship.
Wow. Yeah.
During one of the crossings.
By accident.
By accident. Well, what was happening was she was following protocol. She was zigzagging. 8 minutes to starboard, 8 minutes to port, then back to the base course for 4 minutes, and then 8 again, zigzagging the whole way. Which is, you always think about one of my favorite movies, The Hunt for Red October. Sonar, Crazy Ivan. Ivan. Which way is he going?
Right, but that is a...
that's a common maritime practice in wartime.
There's a John Wayne movie, In Harm's Way, where he gets reprimanded for not doing that because he thought it was tactically better, and they were trying to get away faster because it does eat up your speed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it slows you down overall, but the Queen Mary was so fast it didn't matter.
Sure.
The problem was that the HMS Curacoa, which was escorting her on a 10,000-person troop movement, couldn't keep up with her. So she was zigging and zagging, and the Curacoa was going straight. And through a misunderstanding about the rules at sea, about who has the right of way, and it was a misunderstanding specifically because it was wartime, and the Queen Mary was under direction not to stop for anything. The captain of the Curacoa thought he was in the right, but what happened was the Queen Mary hit him straight amidships at 28 knots, cut that boat in half, and it went down in 6 minutes. There were 99 survivors in the water. 239 sailors were lost, and those 99 survivors had to be rescued several hours later by another escort ship because Queen Mary couldn't turn around.
Yeah, in very cold waters.
Yeah, very cold waters. But with 10,000 troops on board, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
No, it's
Spock. I'm not quoting Spock. That's ridiculous. But anyway, but, and it may be apocryphal, but a lot of people have said that, you could hear the screams when the ship was cut in half.
Really?
Yeah.
That's reported by people on the Queen Mary.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's that's creepy. That's pretty creepy. Now that's not the only creepy thing that happened though. Now you know a little bit about Watertight Door 13, right?
Yes. So Door 13, there was a death at that was recorded. So an 18-year-old fireman/cleaner from England named John Petter, and we have a photo of him up on the website.
Yes.
Yep. And it was on voyage 483, and what happened is that the ship encountered some fog. So as a precautionary measure, the captain had the emergency doors closed. Now, these are watertight bulkheads, so in case, there's a rupture or something, the whole ship won't get flooded. Well, he was originally assigned to the bilge pumping duties in one of the, I think, boiler room 3, and he may have not been as familiar with that particular area of the ship, which is near the engine room. And the thing is, they close pretty fast. So they
close in 6 seconds.
Yeah,
6 seconds.
Yeah. So the thing is that he just may have been trapped. He may have. It was just there's no
underestimated. How
well,
fast.
you know what? There's legend that the guys were goofing around and they because they were bored.
Playing chicken.
They would try jumping in and out from one side to the other and see how many times they could do it before the door actually closed. But you know what? These guys took pride in their work. There's just really no time to be goofing around.
Right. So and there's no evidence either that they were actually doing that. Right?
No. Plus, it's I'm sure they were aware that they hit foggy conditions. This is not the time to be playing chicken. So there's no real truth to that as far as anyone knows. But he did succumb to his injuries and was crushed to death.
Yeah, and of course it was Door 13, right?
Well,
Door 13.
Hey, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other
because it doesn't always mean. But sure, and
a lot of people have reported seeing and hearing strange things down there at that door. So.
That is one spot where there's a lot of activity. There is another one,
cabin 340B.
Right now, the B deck is reportedly the most haunted of the decks on the ship. And what happened is that somebody had died in that room of unknown causes, just kind of passed away in the night.
Nothing dramatic? They didn't hang themselves?
No, just doesn't have to be. That's the thing. It's like actually how they found that out was kind of interesting. Yeah. This is one room where they started getting a lot of report of activity. The faucets turning on, the shower turning on, lights coming on, and it's not just the people staying there, it was also the hotel staff. And it started happening so much that people were complaining or filing reports with the crew that they decided to okay, let's stop renting this out for a bit, check the records, see what happened here. And that's when they came across this person's death. And again, that was the only thing they thought it could be.
So they didn't even know. They weren't even aware that someone had died in this room. They found that out through complaints about the room.
Yes, about weird stuff happening. Right. And, there would be a knock at the door in the middle of the night. They go to the door, there's nobody there. that sort of thing again, and also the faucets.
So can we go?
Like
can we go stay in this room?
You cannot, because it is not. There's pictures of it. Again, if you go check out YouTube,
yeah, they're on our
search
website actually.
Yeah, so there's the carpeting's ripped up. The walls they left it kind of like not. No one's ever going to stay there again. But this is the interesting point: is that you may think this is all malarkey or whatever.
Right, we're trying to get people to come to the ship.
Sure.
It's haunted. Boo-hoo.
But this is we're talking about business now, and if they could rent that room out, they would want the money from that, rather than
right. They're not renting it because things are happening.
No, my point is that this company, this business entity, took this seriously and stopped renting it, and actually did the research to find out why this is happening.
Right.
And there you go. And sure, it's part of the tour of the ghost tour that the ship gives.
Yeah. So that's what you would call an official reaction to a paranormal event.
And you know what? It's like people say, like, well, you're just doing that for a tourist trap kind of a thing. But you know what? It's like, one, they're not making any money off of it, because I think originally when the ship, it was actually 2 rooms or possibly 3.
Oh, yeah,
that
I read
was
that they combined them or
It was
something.
combined into a larger stateroom. That's just it looks really unimpressive, because again they took the carpeting out. There's a couple of fixtures that were still there, like there's a dresser in a corner, but the paint's peeling. They're just really not doing anything with it other than to show people this room on this tour.
Well, the records reflect that at least 49 people are known to have died on the Queen Mary.
Right.
And I found some statistics that indicated 75% of those deaths were crew members, which is probably just normal work hazard kind of stuff.
Sure.
And 25% were passengers.
Right.
There's no records available about how many servicemen or POWs died aboard the ship. The military hasn't released those, but you can bet there were some of those as well.
Right. Now, I have a friend that was stationed on an aircraft carrier for a number of years, and he said just being on board a ship, it's a dangerous place. Things can happen.
Especially an aircraft carrier, right?
Well, especially that one. But
you spent some time on the Queen Mary yourself, didn't you?
I did. I've never stayed there.
You didn't spend the night.
I did spend the night.
Oh, you did spend
Oh,
the night.
sure, yeah.
Oh, you never stayed there as a hotel guest.
Yeah, exactly.
So
why
I was
were you
working.
There? Well, it was a 2-day shoot, a video shoot. That was a promotional video for the Queen Mary.
Oh, okay.
Now the cool thing is that we were taken all over the ship. We were shooting all different aspects of it. Now I didn't get to go into some of the more remote places that are totally sealed off, but I got to go down into the bowels of the ship, as they said, and just everywhere. So. We spent one night, and it was exhausting, because it's metal. You're carrying a gear.
Didn't you say your feet got sore from walking on the metal all the time?
Oh, yeah. No, you're walking all over, and I probably didn't have the right shoes. But no, you probably walked 8 miles in that day just on metal and wood. So you're very, we're exhausted. And you know what? Being all over the ship, I didn't really see anything or hear anything. Okay. Other than when you're below and you hear a clank or something. It's just like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean, there's no, one of the things I hear down below is a little girl laughing, running, playing.
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything.
Who was your guide while you were there? Who told you where to go? How did you know how to get around?
We had a couple of folks that were assigned to us, but one really interesting gentleman, probably in his, I would say, late 60s, early to mid 70s, was the ship's engineer. And of course, when we had a little downtime, as you do in video shoots, I asked him, I was like, hey, this ship is supposedly haunted. Have you seen anything? He's like, well, I really haven't. But he said, I believe a lot of people that I've worked with have. And I can't remember how many, he'd done several, many transatlantic crossings. And he'd never personally seen anything weird or strange, noises here and there, or, but again, that's not attributable to any particular incident or ghost that might be there. Right. But he said plenty of crew members and plenty of people he worked with certainly have, and all the traditional things that they say. So I asked him, what's the strangest thing now that the ship is docked and he's not actively out in the ocean? And he said, well, the ship is run by massive diesel engines, and they have a heartbeat, so boom, 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 boom. And when he's in there day in and day out working, you're constantly hearing that for years at a time. So now that the ship is docked and it's a hotel, he doesn't hear that. It's kind of like the heart has stopped.
Well, thanks for listening to episode 2.
Yes, and come back in 2 weeks for our Halloween show about a place that freaks Scott out so bad he's sworn never to visit and doesn't even like to talk about it.
I want to thank Judson Crane for our amazing theme music, Ryan McCullough for world-class sound design, and Jim Creative Design.
But most importantly, we want to thank our listeners. You can find us online at astonishinglegends.com, on Facebook at the Astonishing Legends Podcast, and also on Twitter.
Copyright Scott Philbrook
and Forrest Burgess. Good night.